So, bonsoir. So, I hope all of you who need simultaneous translations are all well fitted up. So, this evening we are going to talk just a little about something which concerns all of us who are seriously trying to practice the path in the midst of our daily lives. Because, so anyway, traditionally, no, let's start again. The Buddha, after his enlightenment, he said that he would not enter into Mahaparinirvana, in other words, he would not die until the fourfold Sangha was firmly established. The fourfold Sangha means monks, fully ordained monks, nuns, laymen, laywomen. And he specified that this fourfold Sangha must all of them understand, study the Dharma, and practice, meditate, and give it out, propagate it. He never said it was only meant for just monks. However, in the course of Buddhist history in all countries, Asian countries, nonetheless, what happened was that in that kind of society, only a few male aristocrats, and monks were usually given the education, with the result that everyone else relied on the monks for their instruction. And it was the monks who wrote the books, right? So almost all the sutras and tantras and commentaries are written by monks for monks. And okay, so that's how it was. The lay people's role was to support the monks so that they could study and practice. And they have held the lineage, the tradition, for 2,500 years. So I'm not criticizing them. But nonetheless, it was only that section of the Fourfold Sangha that came to be regarded as the real Sangha. And the other three were there to serve that male Sangha. With the result that although the tradition has been beautifully preserved up until the present day, nonetheless, it has meant that the emphasis has always been on how one would practice the Dharma if one were a monk. Right? And so it is only now, in these present days, when the lay people and also now the nuns are becoming highly educated, that the Fourfold Sangha is now coming again into prominence. Because the lay people look at you, you are all lay, right? So, and many, many women, and you are asking, how can I use Dharma in my life? I'm not going to be a monk or a nun. And yet, even though I have a family, I have relationships, maybe I have children, I have parents, I have a job, I have my social life, but still, I want to practice. So now it is a time of really questioning, I feel. How can the Dharma help all of us in our daily life? Now, there are many approaches to this, because this is actually a very important question. And so there are many ways that different people might approach it. So here, as I have not so long a time, and I don't know you, you don't know me, I can only give you some of my thoughts on this. But it's a very important direction for Buddhism nowadays, not only in the West, where, you know, the monastic sangha are so few, but also in Asia, where now you have, as I say, this whole population of highly educated lay people, and who nonetheless want to know more about their Buddhism than merely going to the temples and making offerings and supporting monks. They say, well, if I'm a Buddhist, what Buddhism got for me? So East and West now, this is a whole new direction in which Buddhism is taking off. As monks get less, for various reasons, as in Catholic countries, not quite so bad, but getting there. Monks decline, but highly educated, motivated lay people begin to come forward and look and say, well, how is this teaching going to help me? So Buddhism always, whether monastic or lay, is concerned with the mind, because we live in our minds. And often nowadays, especially, our attention goes outward, but nonetheless, we never can escape from our minds. Even in dreams, we have our mind. I mean, we are constantly thinking, constantly feeling, and mostly we are not in any control of what we are thinking and feeling. And so a lot of our feelings and our thoughts are not very helpful for us or for other people. You know, we have a lot of thinking and combined with our greed and attachment, our grasping mind, and then the other mind which pushes away anything it doesn't like, you know, anger, aggression. Depression also is a form often of anger, even directed towards ourselves. And jealousy, envy, and a lot of ego enhancement, which doesn't bring happiness as we hope it's going to. So we are inwardly really pretty messed up. And we blame everyone else, especially our partners or our children or our parents or our boss or our colleagues or the government, especially. It's always them out there. If only they would change and be how I know they should be, everything would be okay. What's the matter with them? So I think many of us recognize that to go through life thinking like that does not help, because it's always something. There's always somebody who is a problem for us. So the skill is to recognize that all the problems of our life, rather than being a difficulty for us and something which we need to avoid in order to be happy, if we once recognize that actually these problems are very, very helpful to us on the path. So we will deal with that in a little while. How to take problems and use them to transform our own mind, not worrying about changing other people. How do I change myself? That we can do. Other people we cannot do. So, the first thing we need to understand is that really our happiness and our suffering depends on our own mental and emotional attitudes. Some people have outwardly everything in the world and they are so miserable. Other people have almost nothing and they are satisfied. It clearly is not a matter of what we have or do not have. What is the problem is our own attitude to what we have or do not have. So therefore, always it comes back to the mind. How to tame our mind and train our minds so that we can access to our inner happiness, and in that way bring happiness to those around us. Whether we happen to like them or not like them is irrelevant. So therefore always the point is how to tame our mind. If the mind is well tamed, then we have inner peace and we have happiness. If the mind is out of control, then we cause suffering not only to ourselves but to everybody else around us too. So obviously, the crux of the matter, the crucial point, is to deal with our own mind. So then the question comes, how? Now, obviously, it is very best if we read books on how to deal skillfully with the mind, and if we undertake some guided meditation retreats. Guided meditation is very useful, especially at the beginning, because when we start to meditate and problems come up, then if you have someone in front of you saying, you are now going to sit and meditate and problems will come up, then you feel, oh, that's all right then, you know, I'm not, it's not anything wrong with me, it's simply that this is what happens when we try to look at our mind and tame our mind. So also in a guided retreat, you are usually with other people, and therefore you all have to sit and just keep sitting, right? If you're by yourself in the beginning, then you know your knees ache, or suddenly you get a picture of a nice cup of coffee, and next thing you know you're in the kitchen. So if you're with a group, then you can't do that, right? We all have to just sit there. And even though everyone else looks like they're in deep samadhi, and only I have this wild mind, nonetheless, we all have to keep sitting. And someone is helping us, encouraging us, guiding us, and when problems come, someone to talk to. So in the beginning, it's always better to do a guided retreat with a good teacher. And I'm sure in France there are some good teachers who do, you know, shorter retreats, maybe a week, 10 days like this. If you can manage it, that is really good. Also because while one is sitting, then because there is the discipline and the time, you know, many hours every day, then we get a taste. At some point, the mind, for a short time, will definitely begin to calm down. And then we begin to understand, I can do this. Actually, yes, the mind can do this. You know, then the mind goes mad again. Oh, it's so exciting because it can do it. But it encourages us to recognize that if other people can practice, we also can practice. And this is important. So, yes, first, if we can do a retreat, it also gives us a technique. And if we like that technique, then that technique of meditation we can use every day. It's very useful, really, to put aside even a short time every day. My Lama, he said, keep your practice short, but do it. And it's considered better to do like 20 minutes a day rather than 3 hours once a week. I mean, do both is best, but between the two, to keep up, especially if you can manage the same time every day, the brain gets reprogrammed. So then when we sit, if we are Buddhists, then we take refuge, then we take the Bodhisattva vow that we are doing this practice not just so I can feel better, but in order to really awaken for the sake of all beings. Because right now I can't do much. But if I knew more, if I understood more, then I could really be helpful for all beings. So in this way we set our motivation. May I attain enlightenment for the sake of all beings. Then you drop it. And just do whatever practice you are doing that you feel a connection with, without hoping or fearing that anything is going to happen. Just give all your attention to this is a time to go inside. The rest of the day, maybe you have to deal with so many things, so many distractions, but this short time, however long, 20 minutes, half an hour, 2 hours, this is my time. This is the time when I can go in. I'm going to drop all my other thoughts. I'm not thinking about the past. I'm not thinking about the future. I'm just trying to really bring my mind together with the practice. Nothing is going to keep me from that. And the mind will just go chattering on. But ignore. But this time, the mind, it's like sometimes you go in people's houses and they have the television or the radio on. They're not watching it, they're not looking at it or listening to it. But it's in the background, they need the noise. And so it's like that. In our mind, we have all this noise going on, chatter, 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 chatter. But during our time of practice, we just ignore it. Like if we are reading a book and the television is on in the background, our attention is on the book. So likewise, our attention is on whatever is our practice. And we just, if the mind gets drawn to our thinking, then we bring it back again. Okay? Right? So the important thing is every day to have a time which is our own time. If you get up earlier in the morning and you're tired, then go to bed earlier in the night. Okay? No excuses. The point is to bring the Dharma into the center of our lives, not into the periphery. The Dharma has to be right there in the middle, and that is the most important thing. It's not something we do when we've got a bit of time left over. Everything has to be seen from the viewpoint of our mind cultivation. So therefore, the first thing is that we have to make some time for ourselves, unless it's completely impossible and you're the mother of twins and who like to wake up at 4 in the morning. But most people have some time. and keep it regular and do it. Okay. Now there are certain practices which we can use, because people are always complaining they have no time to practice. Right? This is the main complaint of everybody. Oh, I love the Buddha Dharma, but I have no time. So what we have to understand is that Buddha Dharma practice is not just sitting in formal meditation, it's not just reading Dharma books, it's not just going to Dharma centers. It's what we do with our mind, our heart mind, during all our waking days. What are we doing? Moment to moment to moment, whatever tasks we may have, either we are aware or we are not aware. So this awareness or mindfulness, because our minds habitually love to be mindless, because we love to be distracted, because the mind is very happy in the past or in the future, but it feels very awkward in the present and stays there as little time as possible. It needs to be retrained. There's no hope that we are going to be mindful during our day if we do not put that at the center of our commitment. So then the question now is how to train to become more mindful. Now there are various ways that we can approach this. And I mean, many people now are teaching mindfulness. It's the big buzzword, as Philippe knows. In business quarters and in many organizations as a form for stress relief. It's not used as a path to enlightenment, as the Buddha intended, but nonetheless it is shown that even ordinary people not interested in spiritual things at all, if they learn how to bring their mind more attention on what they are doing while they're doing it, makes you feel better. And gradually we become more and more in control of our own mind. Instead of being the slaves to our mind, we become the masters. And then, of course, we are going to feel more in control of our lives. If we're in control of our mind, we're in control of our lives, inwardly. So, the question now is how to learn this new skill. Now, any skill needs practice. We all know that. If you want to be a musician, if you want to be an artist or a dancer or a footballer, if you want to learn a new language, it needs practice. Practice means you do it over and over and over and over, and however many times we, hit the wrong keys or fall flat on our face, we get up and we start again. And if we keep practicing, eventually the neural pathways in the brain get the idea, and gradually it becomes spontaneous. Okay, but in the beginning, no skill is spontaneous. Everybody has to learn how to do something which normally the mind resists. The egoic mind does not want to be mindful. So we have to encourage ourselves. And help ourselves to understand that if we were more mindful, we would actually feel so much better inside when we're not swept along by all our thoughts and feelings helplessly. Isn't it? So, the Buddha was very pragmatic, and so he said, first start with something very obvious, the body. the postures of the body. Essentially, there are 4 postures: standing, sitting, walking, and lying down. All the rest of our postures are just elaborations on those. So, when we are walking, we know we are walking. When we are sitting, we know we are sitting. When we are standing, we know we are standing, and so forth. Normally, when we are walking or standing, sitting, lying down, we are totally unconscious of what the body is doing, unless maybe these ladies on their high stiletto heels, they're probably very conscious of how they're walking. But normally we move and we have no awareness of our movement. That's why, I'm always looking for my glasses. Where did I put them, I mean, usually they're on my head. So a very simple way is when we're walking down the street or in the passageway of our house or in the office or going up and down stairs, just to rest the mind on the awareness of the bodily movements. It's very simple. When we're walking, we know we're walking. We feel it. We don't talk about it. This is the problem. Because we start walking and we're aware of the feeling, say, of the pavement beneath our feet as we're walking. And then we start thinking, oh, look, I'm aware of the pavement beneath my feet. I'm being very mindful. It's really very easy to be mindful. I don't know why people say mindfulness is difficult, because look, I'm being blah, 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 blah. And we are caught back in the mind stream again, and we have lost the ability to just be aware. So, we can make a determination that every time we go up the stairs or down the stairs, we will pay attention to the feeling of that. Because it's quite extraordinary also, just the whole dynamics of how the body moves and how the feet move and so forth, which normally we completely miss. Doesn't mean you have to walk very, very slowly as they do in formal training. But even if we're just moving at a normal pace, we can be conscious of the body and the shifting of the balance of the body to keep us balanced as we walk, especially going up and down stairs. Sitting. If you're sitting at your computer or you're sitting in a train or whatever, wherever, just to be conscious of how the body feels in this moment. What is one's posture at this moment? Doesn't take time. This is simultaneous with whatever else we are doing. Is instead of thinking all these other extraneous thoughts which have nothing to do with anything, we just rest the mind in what is actually happening in this moment, which is that we are walking or sitting. Do you understand? It's very simple. The only problem is that we don't do it. For all of these things, the only problem is we don't do it. It's not that difficult. Another way of helping to train us in mindfulness is to take a few simple actions which we perform every day and just do them mindfully. For example, combing your hair, or brushing teeth, drinking a cup of coffee, eating, anything which doesn't require intellectual input and is an automatic physical action, then to again drop all our thoughts about the past or our plans and fantasies about the future, drop our commentary about the present, and just be. Right, I'm cleaning my teeth. Just feel that. Just relax the mind into the moment. The only thing that is happening actually is that we are cleaning our teeth. All other thinking is extraneous. It has nothing to do with what is actually happening in this moment. So even good things, when they happen to us, because once we have got it and judged it, we like it, we don't like it, it was better last time they did it, and or whatever, or maybe next week it will be better. All this thinking covers up what is actually happening, even when it's a good thing happening. I mean, one might be eating very delicious food, and one eats the first mouthful and makes one's, criticism, or, one likes it, one doesn't like it, they do it better somewhere else, or whatever. And maybe the second bite also, we can be conscious that we're eating it. But by the third or fourth bite, people are off somewhere else. And then suddenly the dish is empty. What happened? That was a good thing and I missed it. Little children, when they are very small, the day lasts forever because everything is new and fascinating. And so everything is fresh. So for them, time is infinite. But as we get older, then it all telescopes, because things are no longer fresh. They're all stale. We've done this so many times, we don't even notice it anymore. And so, next thing you know, we're old and dying. And you think, what happened to life? Not just the difficult things, but also the good things. We miss it. So, if we are genuinely more aware, if we really train ourselves, read books on mindfulness, really think, the Buddha said, this is the one way to liberation. He didn't say it's one of those things you can do if you've got time. He said this is the one path to liberation, is to become aware. Wake up. Then as we become more conscious, more present, more aware, also our mind begins to clear up of itself. And we experience things as if for the first time almost. Fresh, clear, clean. And without having to always make judgments. Just experiencing things as they are. And that in itself gives a whole different light on what our lives are about. There are levels of becoming mindful. As we learn how to become mindful, another very important part of mindfulness of body is, of course, the breath. The breath is very important because, first of all, we are always breathing. And it's the one automatic system which we can alter at our own will. We cannot change the beat of the heart, we cannot change the workings of the kidneys and the livers. But if we say, everybody hold your breath, you can all hold your breath. Everybody breathe fast, everybody goes, right? And in addition, the breath reflects the emotional content. So our breathing changes when we are fearful, when we are angry, when we are passionate, when we are peaceful. The breath reflects our emotional state. And most important, we cannot breathe in the past or in the future. We only breathe now. So if we connect our mind with the breath, the mind is present. And so this is a very, very skillful way, not only during formal practice, if you're watching the breathing, but especially during the day, when, especially if one's mind is feeling tense or distracted or depressed or whatever we are feeling, when we remember, then just very simply bring the attention back, breathing in, breathing out. Just a few breaths. Nobody knows you're practicing. You don't have to sit. Yeah, just sit next to your computer, breathing in, breathing out. It brings us back into the moment. When we're walking, we can be walking, also we can give attention to the breath, anytime. If we are very upset or overexcited, then a few deep breaths can be very calming and bring us back to the center, especially if we are in a situation where people are saying things which upset us or they're doing things which upset us and we want to immediately respond in a negative way. Then instead of responding, to step back and take a few deep breaths. Calm the mind, and from that go forward. Everything, and it's the one, I mean, like shamatha meditation, this calm abiding meditation, it's really quite difficult. Especially in our modern day, where there are so many distractions and people's minds are so wild. It is really very difficult to cultivate deep levels of shamatha, even if one is doing it constantly. But mindfulness is much more simple. I mean, shamatha is wonderful and it's good for people to do, but it's more challenging. To be mindful, if we really understand what we are trying to do to bring attention to the present moment, what is happening in my body, what is happening in my mind in this moment, then gradually that really can transform our whole life. And it is something we do at all times. And it doesn't take time itself. In fact, we become much more efficient, because when we make mistakes, it's because the mind is not being attentive. If the mind is completely present with what it's doing while it's doing it, then it will not make a mistake. It will be very clear. And at the same time rested, not stressed. Our lives nowadays especially are very difficult for people. People are endlessly, with all their iPads and their smartphones and and listening, they are so unengaged with themselves and increasingly with others. I mean, you don't talk to people, you Twitter. So the mind is constantly being pulled here, pulled there, pulled there, pulled there. Never has a chance just to be. So we ourselves have to make choices. we have, if we are serious about practice, then we have to simplify. We have to simplify our lives and see what things we are doing which just endlessly disturb the mind to no purpose. They have discovered now, even psychologists, neuroscientists, and sociologists, that this idea of multitasking is actually very inefficient and completely burns everybody out. The brain is not geared to multitask. So therefore, whatever we are doing, while we are doing it, we should forget everything else and put our attention on it. Then when we've done that, we do the next thing. Then we don't make mistakes and we're efficient. Otherwise, everything is just on the surface, here, there, everywhere else, and we exhaust ourselves. Poor brain. So whatever we are doing, and especially if one is doing a very routine job, to give it our attention. To do it just to do it, not for the result. Thich Nhat Hanh talks about washing dishes to wash dishes. He says there are two ways to wash dishes. One is to wash dishes in order to have clean dishes. So therefore, while we are washing the dishes, we are thinking 100 other things. We're thinking about something somebody said the day before, or we're planning what we're going to shop for lunch or for dinner, or even think, well, when I finish the dishes, then I'll sit down and have a cup of coffee and a croissant. But the one thing we're not thinking about is washing the dishes. That's just automatic. Then we've got clean dishes. But then we sit down to eat our croissant, and after the first bite, again our mind is going off, well, when I go shopping, then I have to buy this, and I should buy that, and so is coming for dinner, so I have to get this. And again, even something nice, like eating a delicious croissant, it's finished and we haven't even noticed we ate it. You understand? I mean, everything goes like this. We're always looking to the future or the past, and we don't even experience what we're doing. So Thich Nhat Hanh says, why not wash dishes to wash dishes? In other words, while we are washing dishes, that is the most important thing in the world. We just relax, we experience the soapy water, we experience washing each dish, we don't think about the past, we are not anticipating the future, we just, after all, the only thing we are doing is washing dishes. Why not be conscious of that? And so then we breathe and wash the dishes. And then our minds also feel clean and washed. Then we sit down and we drink our coffee and we appreciate our croissant. And then we go on to the next thing. Conscious of it, aware of it, appreciating it. Each thing. This is really the best way to transform your daily life. In addition, the other thing which needs to be said is the practice which in Tibetan is called lojong, which means mind training, and it is especially dealing with how to take difficult situations and difficult people that we encounter, and instead of becoming all upset, to recognize that we can learn from this experience and this person. So when somebody does something which upsets us, we do not need to be upset. Being upset is actually our choice. And then we have double upset, right? I mean, think of it, it's really dumb. you know, we have the actual circumstance, and then we have our negative reaction, and so, you know, we are double caught. And often when people do bad things to us, they go on, but we're stuck with the bad thing they did and our resentment and anger and so forth. So we are suffering. They're not suffering. It doesn't make sense. We hurt ourselves. So, therefore, there are so many teachings on how to take difficult people and difficult circumstances onto the path, to make that also into the path. Nothing that happens to us is outside of our practice. Everything is fuel to our practice. We're building a fire here of practice, and all of it can go on to make the flames burn more intensely, and especially difficulties. Because if we can only practice when everything goes right, and we fall apart when things don't go the way I want them to go, then what use is Dharma? So it's very important that we learn how to appreciate, again, difficulties which come to us, because they are teaching us qualities which we could not discover for ourselves and develop if we did not come across obstacles. So therefore, obstacles are our opportunities. A very important quality needed on the path to enlightenment is patience. Now, many people think that patience is a weakness, but actually it's a tremendous strength. Getting angry and upset and irritated every time something annoys us, that's weak. But having forbearance in the face of difficulties is a great inner strength. And it is very much required on the Bodhisattva path. How can we learn this unless somebody annoys us? If everybody does everything we want them to do and says everything we want them to say, that's very lovely, but then what? It's very easy to be loving to people who are lovable. But to have the strength of patience and compassion in the face of people who are really, really difficult, that's something else. So therefore, in the text it always says, when you meet with somebody who acts like an enemy, that means they act in a way we don't want them to act. Instead of getting upset, we should be so grateful. Oh, thank you, you're so horrible. Wow, now I can really practice my patience. Without you, how would I do it? And so then we're grateful. You know, and if they say you should put them on your head like a teacher, if you think of doing that and it makes us laugh, then that's all the better, isn't it? The Buddha said there are two kinds of suffering. There is physical suffering and there is mental suffering. Physical suffering we cannot avoid, but mental suffering we can avoid. That we have the choice. So when we experience difficulties, sickness, and difficult people, difficult circumstances, loss, death, these are inevitable. But how we respond is up to us. This is not just nice ideas. Sounds good, but meh. You know, because of all the problems in Tibet, many serious practitioners and lamas were imprisoned and put into labor camps and tortured and interrogated. And 20, 30 years, for nothing, just because they happened to be in a position of authority in the religious realm. And so then, once they got released, and we heard their stories of the terrible things which happened to them, all the torture and interrogation and starvation and all these things which happened to them. And then you look at them, and their eyes are dancing and full of love and joy. And they say, I've heard this from so many, I'm sure Eileen also, how grateful they were to their gods, because previously compassion had been merely a nice idea that you could debate. But when you're faced with somebody who is intending to really hurt you, and with good intentions on the side of the god, they think that, the Lama has deluded views, so they got to, force them to understand, what Mao really means. So their intention was good from their side. But the Lamas, they say how grateful they were that finally they understood what compassion really means. And they had to draw up from inside all these reserves of love and patience and compassion towards this situation. Because if they didn't, if they gave in to hatred or fear, then they were lost. And the point was that they weren't lost. When one meets them, one is struck by the beauty of their eyes, how they glow. And only they speak of how grateful they were for their imprisonment, how they learned so much, how helpful this was for them on a genuine spiritual path. So, very few of you here are likely to be imprisoned and tortured and interrogated. But nonetheless, on one level, we are all imprisoned. We are imprisoned by our small mind, which only thinks me, me, me. And we are imprisoned by all our negative emotions. And we need to find the key to open up the prison and move away. And that lies within us, all of us. It is very important for us to remember that inherently we are all Buddhas. Each one of us. Not just humans, but animals, insects, birds, fish. All beings have this enlightened potential within us. It's our true nature. We might think that we are just, ordinary human beings and we have all these problems and difficulties and, character faults and all these, fears and depressions and anxieties, and that's who I am. But it's not who we are. From a Buddhist perspective, that is our biggest illusion. We associate and identify with all the wrong things. In the very center of our being, we already are Buddhas. We just haven't seen it yet. Like gold covered over by mud. You only see the mud, you don't see the gold. But the gold is never contaminated by however thick the mud may be. So when we are practicing to come back to our true nature. Our true nature is, this Buddha nature is pure awareness. It's not little Buddha sitting in our heart. Right? My Buddha versus your Buddha. This Buddha nature is our pure primordial awareness, which is always there. Otherwise you couldn't hear me, you couldn't see me if you weren't aware. But normally it's caught up with all our thinking and emotions, so we don't actually see it. That's why it's compared to like the sky or space, because we see all the things, but we don't see the space. And yet nothing could exist if it was not space. Right? I mean, you couldn't sit here if there was no space. And also all these solid things, including ourselves, ultimately are space. Where is space not? Space is all pervading. Likewise, our genuine awareness is all pervading. It's at the time when we are no longer thinking I versus other. When that whole structure falls away, then we open up into a very vast, spacious, open awareness. And mindfulness is the bridge. Mindfulness is not this primordial awareness because it always needs an object, right? I'm aware of I'm mindful of my postures, I'm mindful of my breath, I'm mindful of the mind. Mindfulness has to have an object. But it's a bridge to a much deeper level of awareness, which is objectless, subjectless. But completely, it's like waking up. And we recognize that normally we're half asleep. So, along with being mindful, along with really read some books on Lojong, on mind training. There's some beautiful books nowadays on this type of thing. Pema Chodron has been very popular. You could read her books. For taking difficulties, difficult people, difficult circumstances, all the problems which come into our life, and recognizing that all of this can be used on the path. It can really be a big, big help to us. It's not an obstacle. And then the other thing which we need is to open our hearts to be kind. The Dalai Lama says that the most important thing we can learn is to have a good heart. And so, during the day, whoever we meet, whether they are nice to us or difficult, they are all the object of our good-heartedness. But the Buddha said that first we develop loving kindness to ourselves. And it's very interesting that, especially, I don't know in France, but certainly in other parts of, like in the States and in England and so, people find it very difficult to love themselves. They can love their children, they can love their parents, they can love their partner, but they feel very, very awkward sending thoughts of loving kindness to themselves. But if we don't forgive ourselves, if we don't make peace with ourselves, if we're not friends with ourselves, who we never can escape from, no matter where we travel, if we were not at peace within ourselves, how can we be genuinely friendly and at peace with everyone else? It has to start at home. It doesn't mean that we don't think we have faults. If we have faults, we see we have faults. Okay, everyone has faults. It's no big deal. We're going to work on that. We also have good qualities, and we're going to encourage those. But we really, this is not some kind of new agey thing. No, this is the Buddha. He said, when he gave his teaching on loving kindness and compassion and empathetic joy and equanimity, he starts, always you start with yourself first. You have to make friends with yourself. Encourage. We have to encourage ourselves. Who is going to encourage us if we don't encourage ourselves? If we don't believe in ourselves, who will believe? This is very important. This is a very, very traditional meditation on giving loving kindness and compassion. First to oneself, then to people one loves, then to people one is neutral towards, never really thought whether they're happy or not, and then to people we have difficulties with, our so-called enemy, the person who is a problem for us, and then to the whole world. All the beings in the world want to be happy. Nobody wants to be unhappy. So give them that. Imagine light shining, golden light or white light coming out from the heart and embracing all beings. But it starts with ourselves. And during the day, whoever we meet, be kind. I'd probably give you enough to get on with. The important thing is to take the Dharma, your spiritual path, and put it at the center of your life. Don't think it's something which you just do when you've got a bit of extra time. People complain so much their life is meaningless. But it's up to us to give it meaning. Life is meaningful or meaningless depending how we use it. But the important thing is our heart mind. This has to be cultivated. And it will resist. It doesn't want to be cultivated. So, we have to be very patient, but very persevering, and practice, and practice, and practice. And then one day, you will suddenly find in a very stressful situation, maybe a very challenging situation, that your reaction is completely different to how you would have imagined. And instead of getting all upset and angry, you suddenly just feel very clear and kind and recognize it really doesn't matter. And your thought will be, may you be well and happy. The mind can be trained. I mean, now also neuroscientists are recognizing this. Actually, we can change all our brain structure. Our neural pathways can change. And not in years and years and years. Within, if we're really sincere, then within a very short time, things start lighting up which never lit up before. And other parts which were very active, aggressive parts, die out. And you know, really these scientists are amazed at actually how quickly it can happen. If people are, you know, diligently really trying to reprogram their minds. And as the Buddha said, you know, we can change. He said, if we could not change, I would not ask you to change. But since we can, then do. You know, so where the bits in us which are causing problems for ourselves and for others, change it. Nobody can do it for us. The greatest guru in the world could never do it for us. Only we are responsible for our own heart minds. But we're lazy. We make excuses. We put it off. You know, in the future, yes, when the kids have left home, when this happens, when that happens, then I'll really get down to it. It'll be too late. The only time we have is now. So it's very, very important that from the depths of our heart we make a commitment to take everything that happens, our families, our jobs, our social life, ourselves, everything, and place it on the path. Yes, so are there any questions?
What is the place of women? What is the place of women in spirituality in general, and in Buddhism in particular?
Well, obviously, I mean, Buddha nature, I mean, our primordial awareness is not male or female. And when... Yes, and when we are even just sitting in meditation, we are not male or female. We're not thinking, oh, I'm a female meditating. We're just, you know, we're just there. But of course, as I explained at the beginning, very quickly, not just in Asia, in the West too, female education was very much, you know, ignored, basically. And so as a result, there is very little female voice in Buddhism. This is not because women were not practicing and attaining, but then nobody wrote it down. And if nobody writes it down, then nobody knows. That's all. And mostly the women were not going about founding monasteries and big buildings and establishments. So as a result, also they were often not commemorated. There, of course, there are some, just as in Catholicism, there are many great female saints. I mean, and in Tibetan Buddhism especially, there are some wonderful women. And at the very beginning, the first nuns around the Buddha, for whatever reason, their life stories and their songs of realization have been preserved down to the present day in something called the Therigatha, which means verses of the elder sisters. And so we know about these nuns, these early nuns from the time of the Buddha, the beautiful verses of realization. But nowadays, as you know, as women become educated and find their own inner confidence, then, as all the lamas are saying now to our nuns, well, in the past, sorry girls, you were very neglected and overlooked, and you didn't have much opportunities, so therefore to be reborn as a male was much preferable for that reason. But nowadays that's not true at all. The Dharma is there, you are educated, you can study, you can practice. There's nothing you cannot do now in a female form. And in fact, I have met with a number of meditation teachers, including Burmese sayadaws, teaching in retreat centers like Upandita Sayadaw, who's a very esteemed meditation teacher. And he told me that his best students were the village women. He said, because they come, I tell them, you do this. So they go away and they do it, and then, you know, up they go. He said, I tell the monks, you do this, and they go away and think, well, he said you do this, but so-and-so says you should do that. And how about somebody else who said da-da-da? And he said, so all their mind is just thinking this far and they never get anywhere. So he says also that women are at home in the intuitive. And, you know, of course, some men are highly intuitive and some women are not intuitive at all. But on the whole, women are much more in tune with their emotions, because poor men, you know, from little boys, they are taught not to show their, maybe not in France, I don't know, but usually they are taught not to show their emotions. Boys don't cry, boys don't get emotional, that's a girl's thing. And as a result, as they grow up, they find it very difficult to actually engage with the heart. Whereas women don't have that problem, because nobody's told them girls don't get emotional. And also they are readying themselves to maybe become mothers, so that nurturing aspect is very natural to women. And this is a big advantage on the spiritual path, because it's not just up in the head. We have to bypass the head to go down into the heart. And so women are naturally much more in tune with their heart. And only they need to become more in control of their emotions. And then, you know, they can go up, up, up. So nowadays, most of the Dharma centers, it is women. And also in Asia, more and more nuns are coming up. And there are the nunneries now, even in like China and in Tibet and in Taiwan, Vietnam, many more nuns than there are monks nowadays. So, I mean, I think now, whether we are male or whether we are female, it really is irrelevant. You know, we all have equal opportunities to practice. What difference? Before it was difficult because you didn't have access and you weren't educated. Now everybody is educated, and the teachings are there, and male or female, honestly it makes no difference. We all have negative emotions, we all have positive emotions, and it all depends on our ability to really be persevering as well as patient on the path. And then, you know, we can do anything.
I'm starting an activity with trust in myself, and suddenly I lose confidence, I lose heart. It's like turbulence. Which attitude should I have in those moments?
I think again, you know, one should just take a few deep breaths, get centered, and maybe do some loving kindness meditation to oneself. And remember that one really has Buddha nature. It's all, you know, ultimately everything is fine. And anybody, you know, recently I was reading an article which was on a critique of a book. This book was saying that they had done a lot of research and found that people who have lots of talents and are very intelligent and like become top girl, top boy in the school are often not the ones who actually do best in life. And the people who actually succeed are the people who keep going. You know, who even when, you know, things fall apart, they pull themselves together and believe in what they're doing and keep going. They're the ones who succeed, not necessarily the ones who are the brightest or the most obvious ones to succeed. Often those people don't succeed because they get complacent or they get distracted. So it's very important that this is why I'm saying make friends with ourselves, because we have to take ourselves on the path. You know, I mean, ultimately we go beyond our small sense of self. But at the beginning, it's that sense of self which is going to walk the path. And so we have to encourage ourselves. It is not spiritual. So, I mean, in Buddhism, this idea of humility and flagellation is just not there. You have to believe that, you know, ultimately we can succeed because we have that potential within us to succeed. And genuine humility is when we're not thinking about ourselves at all. Certainly not thinking I'm the most stupid person or I'm hopeless and so forth. That's not humility. In Buddhism, that is considered to be pride. Because if I think I'm the best or I think I'm the worst, it's all me. Right? So it's an inverted sense of pride and it achieves nothing. So encourage yourself. And hang out with people who encourage you.
Can I visit you at your nunnery?
We have a very nice nunnery about 2 hours from Dharamshala, where the Dalai Lama lives, and about 1 hour from where the Karmapa lives. And we have a guest house, so you are all very willing, including the gentlemen. Male or female?
1 week.
Yes, 1 week limit. But for 1 week you're very welcome to come, and you can join the pujas of the nuns. And it's in a very nice, quiet area. So any of you who come to India and come to Himachal Pradesh are very welcome to come and visit. And there are many, in that area, there are many monasteries and lamas and things like that. It's a very nice area. So yes, you're all very welcome. Many of the great lamas were married with families. So obviously monasticism isn't a sine qua non. But of course, to master any skill, even if you want to be a musician or a footballer, if you want to be professional, you have to renounce. Right? You have to give up a lot of things in order to focus your attention completely on the skill you want to master. I mean, if you're a musician, you practice for hours and hours. For dancers, ballet dancers and others, they spend all day practicing, you know, maybe 8 in the morning to midnight when they're doing the performance. They're practicing. I mean, their whole life is structured to that, what they eat, their social life and everything. So we know that for worldly achievements. How can we imagine that anything less is required of completely transforming the mind? Obviously. But nonetheless, that I'm not saying that in this lifetime you're going to become Samyak Sambuddhas. But nonetheless, definitely one can make a big step forward. I mean, one might not manage 100% spiritual progress in this lifetime, but one can definitely manage, 5, 10, 15, 20%. Definitely. And that's already way ahead of the rest of the world. And next lifetime, carry on. So, yeah, I mean, of course, if those who want to spend their life in retreat, very nice. But don't think that if I cannot spend all my life in retreat or become a monk or nun, therefore I cannot practice. Or, well, I will start practicing when I retire, then I will start. Because postponing is really a very dangerous attitude. There is no time. This is the time. We don't know tomorrow what's going to happen to us. We only have now. And no excuses. The situation we are in now is where we're going to work. And completely saturated with our Dharma attitude. Everyone. How can I use this on the path? Every single being. Every situation. then life opens up.
Alors la
It
vie
has so much meaning.
complètement, elle a vraiment un sens.
And as we begin to become more present, more conscious, I think interests in many things drop away by
Il y
themselves.
a un intérêt pour beaucoup de choses qui nous abandonnent.
The Buddha often talked about
Parlait souvent
that the path was a path of maturation and liberation. In other words, we have to grow up.
de mûrissement et
And he called ordinary people like us
il fallait grandir.
the childish.
Et il appelait les gens ordinaires comme nous.
And so, to my mind, often this renunciation is not that you have to give up something that you desperately love and you know, you feel a pain in your heart, but that we outgrow it.
Non, c'est qu'en fait, nous dépassons cela.
Like
Comme
a small child, you know, they have their teddy bear
ils ont leur nouveau,
and they love their teddy bear, no matter what state the teddy bear is in. And if we take the teddy bear from the child saying, this is very childish, you should grow up, then the child will feel so hurt. It's not ready to let go of the teddy bear. But as the child grows
en
up,
grandissant,
of itself, other things will take place of that teddy bear. Stick it in a cupboard and forget it.
le nounours et puis il le met dans un placard et
He's outgrown it.
il a grandi, il a dépassé ça.
And likewise, on our spiritual path, we begin to outgrow things which seem to us so compelling and fascinating. One day we just say, why am I doing this?
Pourquoi est-ce que je fais ça?
Why am I watching this?
Pourquoi est-ce que je regarde ça?
You know? Switch it off.
Je peux juste l'éteindre.
Like trees, you know? If we pull the leaves in the summer, then they're resistant.
Si on arrête
But by the
de
autumn,
couper,
of themselves, they turn color and they
à
fall.
l'automne, d'elles-mêmes, elles vont tomber de là.
So as something else takes over
Quelque chose d'autre prend
our
le
heart,
prend le dessus.
then naturally
Alors naturellement,
we lose interest
je perds
in
l'intérêt
many of the worldly
dans
things
de
which
nombreuses choses
we were so fascinated
qui
with,
nous fascinent.
especially those which disturb the mind.
Il faut pas faire
I
autre
mean, it
chose.
doesn't mean like, you know, you have to give up interest in everything.
Ça veut pas dire qu'on perd
But there are
l'intérêt
some
dans les
things
choses,
which
mais
are
des choses
really
qui sont vraiment
activate negative
actives,
emotions.
des émotions négatives.
And since we're trying to
Puisque nous
clear
essayons
our
de
mind,
clarifier les personnes,
why
pourquoi
put in more junk?
mettre davantage de sottises ou d'ordures?
Question of the day.
What do you think of people who are not conscious, the ignorant people? Wouldn't they be more happy than those who are aware, those who are conscious? La question c'est que pensez-vous de ceux qui ne sont pas conscients, des gens ignorants? Ne seraient-ils pas plus heureux que ceux qui ont conscience?
Well, I think the general population is in general unconscious,
Elle est inconsciente.
but I wouldn't say they're especially happy.
Je ne dirais pas qu'ils sont particulièrement heureux.
And especially if something goes wrong for them,
Particulièrement si quelque chose
then, you know, many people, you know, they have an outer facade of being okay, but when you take away that outer mask, then all the pain, all the problems, all the fears and anxieties, they're just sitting there. And so many people say that their life, you know, it has no point. Apart from making money, then what? And then you make money and then what? You know, so people are feeling very lost, and especially in the present day society, which is so completely immersed in confusion and in distraction. More and more and more we are losing our own inner autonomy and becoming less and less aware. As we become aware, I mean, really, things become so much more clear, so much more simple, and something very deep inside opens up. It's a level of happiness which does not depend on external circumstances. unbelievable that people choose to be so unconscious. Whereas human beings,
C'est incroyable que les gens choisissent d'être si
the whole point is that we are supposed to be intelligent.
d'être un être humain, c'est que nous sommes censés être intelligents.
What we do with our
Ce
intelligence?
que nous faisons avec notre intelligence.
Ah, the gods weep.
You pleure. What day and month did you leave the cave?
What?
What day and month did you leave the cave?
Who knows?
Quel jour et mois la grotte?
I left in 88.
Je suis parti en 88.
I know that. When exactly?
When are we ready for solitary retreat? What are the conditions of success apart from the advice of the teacher? Quand sommes-nous prêts pour une retraite solitaire? Quelles sont les conditions de succès mises à part les conseils?
Well, first we have to know what we're doing,
D'abord, il faut qu'on sache.
because it's no good being in a solitary retreat and then doubts as to the practice come up,
savoir ce qu'on fait, parce que ça
and there's
sert
no
à
one to ask. Because nowadays everybody has mobile phones, but you're supposed to leave mobile phones when you're in retreat. So you know, so therefore, this is why I say start with doing guided retreats and get good instruction, so you know what you're doing, and also so that when you know the initial problems come up, you will know how to deal with them. It's not like for the first time. But normally people who have done quite a few group retreats, at a certain point they understand the technique, and they feel the need now to go and practice alone, because you know, practicing with other people is an inspiration, an energy, but it can also be a distraction. You know, so if somebody's fidgeting next to you, or they're coughing, or there's, you know, people get very sensitive about people around them. So therefore, there are, at a certain point, people feel that they would like to go away and try it by themselves. So the important thing is also to recognize that there's nothing to achieve. Nothing to gain. Nothing's going to change. Don't have any hopes or any fears. Just do the practice to do the practice. Because otherwise, the ego just takes over again. The ego wants to get something. And to, thank you. The ego wants to have experiences and realizations. And as long as the ego is in charge, nothing will transform. So when one goes into retreat, one should go with a very spacious, relaxed mind. At the beginning, set the motivation, as I said, and then let it go. Just think, though, that one is practicing with all sentient beings. One is their representative. They don't know how to do this retreat, so I'm going to do it on their behalf. All beings are coming with me. But at the same time, as I say, that's at the beginning, then relax. And just recognize, say to your mind, listen mind, get yourself together. We're in retreat now. I don't want any more nonsense from you. You're going to cooperate. And then bring the attention to whatever you are doing, but in a relaxed way. I mean, it's very important. It's like, you know, like you see an eagle flying. You know, they are very relaxed, but at the same time very alert. You looking for something to eat. So that kind of mind, which is very open, spacious, just sailing on the currents, and yet completely present. And to not just ignore the background noise. Not get swept up. When we get swept along with it, bring the mind back. When we get swept along, bring the mind back. No problem. No judgments. But don't allow the thinking mind to take over. Because when there is no external stimulus, then the mind is very happy to switch in with entertainment. Right? And so if one is not really alert and really focused, then the mind can just come up with all its memories, all its fantasies, all its favorite daydreams, all its plans and ideas. Or as we're sitting, then suddenly a bright idea comes up, and next thing you know, so one has to be strict with oneself, but at the same time, relax, not tight and stressed. It's not something that you're going to end up being more stressed about. And enjoy. I think the real secret of good practice is to enjoy it. Because anything, if we enjoy it, we do it well, with no effort. So if we can enjoy our practice, then it becomes effortless. And even when we get bored or if it's difficult, just to keep bringing the mind back, bringing the mind back. Sometimes it's nice just to also just drop everything and just stay in inner silence. But it's even the Tibetans, they have a saying, body in the cave, mind in the bazaar. So, I mean, they know the problem, right? But you have to keep your mind where your body is.
So, un esprit éveillé, vif, est-il un esprit essentiellement présent? So, an awakened mind, is it a mind which is essentially present?
Yes, it's present even when one is thinking of the past or when one is thinking of the future. Still, the mind is aware that one is thinking of the past or thinking of the future. So in that way, it's always now. Our discursive thinking mind is the one which is caught up in the past and the future and circles around the present, but it never experiences the present because it's always thinking. So the awareness is very also very silent, as well as very clear and empty. It's called empty because it is not something which solidifies into something. It's very open, like space. Space is empty. You can't grasp it and say, this is my space. Space connects us with everything.
Okay. In this suffering world, should we become involved, or should we just focus on our inner change?
Well, I mean, I think for different people at different times in their life, different circumstances, but on the whole, it's very important for us to be engaged as much as we can in trying to help others. Of course, our ability to genuinely help others is limited by our own inner confusion. And a lot of people who have tremendous compassion, because they don't have the balance of wisdom, they just end up burning out. I mean, many social workers and others, they just, in the end, they just can't take it. It all comes in, and then it sits there like a heavy lump inside, and they don't know how to transform it into wisdom. And then that's not much use. Doesn't help us, it doesn't help others. So this is why it's considered to be helpful to first get our own mind together a bit. I mean, it's like if you wanted to be, you looked at all the suffering, the physical suffering in the world, and felt, you know, really I've got to go out and help these people. All these people are so sick. And somebody said, well, if you really want to care for sick people, then first you should go to medical school. And then you say, no, I can't go to medical school, that's selfish. You know, meantime, all these people are so sick out there, and I'm in school studying. And so, you know, with the best intentions, we grab a bag of medicines and maybe a scalpel, you know, and there's knives, the surgeons use, and go forth to help all these people. But because we have no knowledge, then we give all the wrong medicines to all the wrong people, and what we do with the scalpel, good intentions, lots of compassion. But clearly, it would have been wiser to be less impatient, recognize our inability to benefit others when we ourselves have no knowledge, and gain knowledge, so that then there's going to be endless suffering beings out there. It's not like, you know, they're going to run out while you're stuck in medical school. And now you can really help. This is the idea behind the, you know, getting your own mind, heart together, really developing some genuine insight into how things really are, gaining some genuine experience before going off to tell everybody else how to live. But in the meantime, of course, you can combine meditation and practice and doing social outreach. I mean, that's a beautiful thing to do. You know, because it's practical. It's not enough just to sit on our cushions thinking, may all beings be well and happy. You know, we have to go out and really try to help as much as we can with the skills which we have.
Do you think that we can be a good Buddhist with practicing with little retreat time? Pensez-vous que nous pouvons être un bon bouddhiste en pratiquant peu les retraites?
Yes, of course, we can still be good people. We can still be good Buddhists. We can still, as the Dalai Lama says, develop a good heart. And, you know, even if we don't do much retreat, we can have some time which we give to going inside ourselves. And you know, meditation is only one of the paramita which are needed for enlightenment. It's not the whole story. I mean, we need generosity, ethics, patience, enthusiasm, as well as meditation and wisdom. We need loving kindness, we need compassion. And personally, I think we also need a good sense of humor, so we can laugh at ourselves, not take ourselves too seriously. So, even without retreats, you know, we can learn how to lighten our lives and really, you know, cultivate these qualities while we are at the same time uprooting some of our negativities, you know, pulling the weeds out from our garden and watering all the good plants. That's it? Good. Okay, so I think that no, because it's 9 o'clock, and I think that's enough for everybody. So thank you very much for your questions and for listening, and thank you, Philippe, and thank you very much for inviting me here to this lovely, charming center. So thank you, Venerable Elizabeth. And we'll just dedicate the merit. Do you have a special prayer for dedicating the merits? Huh? Oh, okay.